Hello there. Welcome to today's talk from Orchestra Vitae in their series during this month ahead of their concert on the 20th of November. So my name's Naomi Belshaw, and I'm here today to talk to composer Dani Howard, which will be really exciting in a moment. Before I go on to that, I wanted to say a little bit more about me and how I'm involved in this conversation. So I've been a member of Orchestra Vitae and a violinist in it since about 2013, which has always been so much fun. And I remember it was Lindsay Silver, actually, who invited me to the orchestra for the first time. And it was an interesting time for me because when I first started playing in the orchestra, I was working in music, but I then became a classical account manager at a company which was all about going up and down the country talking to composers and living composers and how they could make a better living. And for me, the orchestra was just such a lucky happenstance in that in every concert we had, we were working with living composers and helping them promote their repertoire. So I just found it a lovely way to combine what is my day job with what I enjoyed, being a violinist and having grown up played violin. So I want to show you a little clip now. So I remember when I was in one of the concerts in 2017 for Orchestra Vitae, we were playing a piece by Sir Peter Maxwell Davies, and it reminded me how my work life was intersecting with Orchestra Vitae life when everyone had been watching this clip on YouTube from the Scottish Chamber Orchestra, and somehow my two worlds intersected. So let's have a little look at that clip now.
It was my dear friends Jack and Dorothy Rendell on Hoy, and they got married, and it was an occasion for great celebration. And you hear the guests arrive and be politely greeted with a glass of whiskey. But as the dancing starts and proceeds, it becomes a little bit more jolly and inebriated. And there's one section where...
Yeah, so just very briefly, that clip, it was just really funny. So I was there at that concert, which was the BBC Proms, there for my work. And when I turned up to the first rehearsal for that 2017 concert, everyone from the orchestra was going, Naomi, I just saw you in that concert. So yeah, Orchestra Vitae has been always a big part of my life, and I love what they do. So it's really exciting to be running this interview today. So now I want to introduce you to composer Dani Howard.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, Naomi. Thanks for having me on.
All right. Do you want to say a bit more about how you became a composer in the first place?
Yeah, so I'm Dani Howard, and I am involved with Orchestra Vitae, but we will go into that a bit later. And I'm a composer and orchestrator. I grew up in Hong Kong and went to school there, primary and secondary, and then I moved to London to study at the Royal College of Music when I was 18, where I actually met Naomi while I was studying there. Again, more on that later. But I always knew I wanted to be a musician, and I played drum kit was my first instrument, and then piano and cello, and then I taught myself guitar. And when I was in my teenage years, I was in a lot of bands and I loved writing songs. And I suppose that was my first kind of time writing music. But it was really only when I was 16 or so and doing GCSE music, actually, and we had a composition, and I hadn't even crossed my mind that composition was something that you could be. I really didn't understand what that would entail in terms of a career. But as soon as I looked more into it, I just thought this is perfect, because while I love playing all these instruments, I think I have a short attention span per instrument. I would just go from phase to phase, and I don't think I had that singular passion for a single instrument. And that's what made me find composition so perfect, because it meant you can go from writing one piece for orchestra to another tuba piece or percussion piece, and it just gave me that ability to express myself in so many different ways. So went to study composition. I graduated in 2015, and now here we are.
Yeah, no, it's great. I mean, I've always seen myself more as a player, so I play violin in the background, but I love connecting with other people's work. So I guess I have a very different sentiment in terms of how I connect with music, maybe than a composer might. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
I probably then wanted to like talk a little bit about, so we've known each other quite a long time now. I think we first met in 2014, as you say. I was, as part of my job, looking after composers. I went to the Royal College of Music to have a stand there and speak to composers and give them advice on how they would maybe make a little bit of money from their career. And I saw you there. That was a fun time, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. But then we reconnected over the years. And I think one of the highlights, or the way that we really intersected, linked to Orchestra Vitae, was a few years later when I spoke to Fiona, who manages the orchestra, and they were looking to commission a new composer. So in my work world, as well as being a player in the orchestra, we had a meeting to discuss contemporary composers and the idea of commissioning someone, asking a composer to write a new piece specifically for the orchestra, which I think was the first time they'd done that. And I brought your name up because obviously we kept in touch since 2014, and then they got in touch with you. So that was quite a nice coincidence. So do you remember that time when Orchestra Vitae first got in touch with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'll go back a little bit. After we met, Naomi has been a gem in being so proactive with all the composers that she's been in touch with and likes their music, and she had regularly brought me to many events to meet lots and lots of people. So her bringing me to Orchestra Vitae, this was their first commission, which was a huge honor, but it was also my first orchestral commission. Which was huge because obviously when you're studying, you get a little bit of experience with orchestra, but not with a full piece. And so it was just chamber music that I was writing. And I actually remember I was in Prague when I got an email from Fiona at the Dvorak composition competition. And it was one of the most stressful, amazing experiences, but very stressful. And I remember we just finished the week, submitted the piece. We had to write 2 pieces in 5 days, and then I got an email from Fiona, and it was perfect timing because I just graduated and I didn't have much in the diary, so it was incredible to have something a year ahead, a year later, for orchestra of a decent length. So yeah, it was amazing that Naomi put my name forward for that. Yeah.
So can I ask you a bit more about that, like first orchestral commission? How did you go about putting it together? How long did it take you actually, and how did you decide which instruments to focus on?
Because they gave me so much notice, which was fantastic, I obviously started thinking about it right away, but I also have learned that I don't like starting pieces until I need to start them, because I also think if I have too much time, I'll take too much time and I'll question too much and I'll change my mind too many times. And I find I do like starting, with enough time that I know I'm not leaving it too late. But so I didn't actually start. I probably started 3 to 4 months before the deadline. So over 6 months after I got the commission. But obviously a phrase that my teacher said that I loved is that, you need time to let it marinate in your mind. So even though I didn't officially start until a few months before, ideas were definitely marinating. But it was quite overwhelming because for a first orchestral commission, when you're used to writing chamber music, suddenly the palette of what you can explore with textures and ideas is just infinite. I mean, as it is with every ensemble, but in a different way. So it was quite overwhelming at first, and I did have to narrow down what I wanted to try and achieve. And yeah.
I mean, how does the title Arches link to what you did musically?
So this piece was commissioned for the concert was a 250th anniversary of Shakespeare, and they were very great in their commissioning kind of guidelines. They said we'd like in some way to be linked, but you can interpret that link as you'd like. But when I first met with Fiona and Barbara from Orchestra Vitae, they told me that their resident venue was St. John Smith Square. And I'd just been there recently, and I absolutely loved the space. And the thing that kind of brought the most, the impact that it had on me was these big arches in the building itself. And I do very much love architecture and have always been inspired by that. So I felt that arches kind of has a double meaning in a lot of the storytelling that Shakespeare has in Romeo and Juliet, which was one of the other pieces that was played in the concert. So in that sense, I used arches as the kind of ups and downs in storytelling of that play. And it linked the venue and the premiere as well.
Yeah, no. Well, I remember very well the rehearsals leading up to the concert as well. As a player, it was really exciting to be playing, a premiere of a piece and it being written for the orchestra. But I also remember being slightly terrified, even though we were kind of friends, but being there in the orchestra and having the composer in the audience, listening to you playing a work, and you're not sure if you're getting the part quite right or the rhythms quite right, because some of them were quite, tight, I seem to remember. So what is it like for, you as a composer to be sitting in the audience, I guess, hearing your piece for the first time live as well?
Absolutely. I mean, for me, the first rehearsal is terrifying. I actually avoid going to the first rehearsal if I can, unless there is only one rehearsal, and then I go. But if I can choose, I don't go to the first rehearsal, because I do feel that. I feel the players are anxious that I'm there, because and a first run is not going to be perfect, and the things that aren't perfect, they're going to know aren't perfect, and the conductor just needs to work with an orchestra. It's very different with chamber music, where you're speaking directly with the individuals, but with an orchestra, it does go through the conductor, and I feel like it's almost better not to be there for the first rehearsal. So let the conductor work on it, get things right, and then you come up later. And also you're terrified if you've made a mistake with the music, someone's got a bar missing, something's not transposed properly. That's always terrifying. So after a first run, I'm pretty relaxed. But and then the concert, I try to enjoy it, but also I'm very stressed, because obviously if you have very little control over what happens, and things can go wrong and always do go wrong in certain ways, some big, some small. But yeah, so you're very nervous. But that concert, I had a lot of family come from around the country, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Should we have a listen to an excerpt of it now?
Yeah, I think this is the ending.
Okay. Ah, lovely. So I work with composers a lot now, and I do lots of strategy work and talk about like building careers and things like that. So you said earlier that this was your first orchestral commission. So is it right in saying, was this a pivotal time in your career for what happened next after this?
Absolutely. I mean, I knew before it was happening, it was fantastic because Orchestra Vitae were very cooperative in letting me film and record the piece, which I just had a feeling about this piece that I knew having an opportunity to work with orchestras with an orchestra was so important. And it was great that we have footage like this. And so after this, I was able to put the piece on YouTube, on my website, which for starters just makes a huge difference because composers often, we've written lots of pieces, most of which we either don't have a recording, or if we do, we're not allowed to show, put it on our website or anything like that. And so yeah, this piece, firstly, I was always scared of writing for orchestra before writing this piece. And as soon as I did it, I just thought, oh my gosh, this is what I want to do all the time. And so to have this piece recorded like that, it allowed me to do several applications for various things. And there's one competition in particular. It was the Classic FM and Royal Philharmonic Society commission for their 25th anniversary. And it was incredible because I wanted to be considered for one of the orchestral commission slots. And for that, you had to apply with an orchestral piece. So I was able to apply with this and got that, won that competition, which gave me a commission with the Royal Liverpool Philharmonic, which again was a huge turning point in my career. So yeah, I'm really grateful to have had this.
It sounds like it was able to be your calling card. I remember, at that time, as I shifted in the industry, I went from kind of giving composers advice in the background to kind of working in the funding world to help composers still. That having orchestral works that you can share as part of funding applications, or the industry can see in general for all kinds of competitions, is so important for a composer, so that they can reach the next step. And yeah, it sounds like for you, being one of the composers chosen for that Classic FM kind of 25-year celebration, that was then your next step up. So I'm right in thinking, because obviously I know a little bit about your career, that through that competition and making connections with the Royal Liverpool Philharmonic, that's ended up being a longer standing relationship, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's been incredible. So I wrote that piece via Classic FM and the Royal Philharmonic Society, and just had such an amazing time with the orchestra. I'd never been to Liverpool, never heard the orchestra, and they were just incredible. First run was just immaculate. I didn't really have anything to say. And luckily, the orchestra enjoyed playing the piece. So I got another commission, a longer commission, for last September. A longer piece to be the opening of their 2019-20 season, which was incredible. But actually before that, I forgot. They did program that same piece again 6 months later at the Royal Albert Hall. So yeah, I worked with them twice then, and then they gave me a commission for their season opener, which was last year with their music director Vasily Petrenko, a 12-minute piece. Yeah, so I think we have got a clip of it here. I believe.
Yeah, should we watch a clip of your latest?
Yeah, this was my latest orchestral piece.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Yeah, so that was an ending. Aren't they great?
So, yeah. So if there's anyone out there who wants to ask any questions, please do let us know on the chat, and we can ask them to Dani. But like I have a question for you, Dani, just a general one. So what would a day in a life of a composer be in your world?
Very, very varied. Depends on what project. It's funny because we get projects so far in advance, and often I'm writing several pieces at the same time, but I don't do it at the same time, if that makes sense. So some projects are 6-month pieces that are really long and bigger projects. Others are just 3 months or 1 month. And so a lot of it is balancing that. But usually I get up quite late and I always exercise, because if I don't, I can't concentrate for another 4 hours or whatever. And yeah, I definitely take naps in between composing because I get tired. But when I'm composing, actually time kind of stands still. So sometimes it's only half an hour, and other times it's 3 hours, and I haven't like taken my eyes off the screen or stopped writing. And I usually start at the piano with manuscript, and then as soon as things get slightly more formed, I move it into the computer because it's faster to kind of make changes. But yeah, it really depends. I tend to split up my work into creative work and technical work. So when I'm writing, I like having no limitations, and I don't put in any dynamics because I know what dynamics are doing, or I don't worry about notation, and I just kind of spat it all out there. And there's a whole other side to composing that's a lot more technical, the notation, the dynamics, exactly all the detail that you need to add to make sure it'll sound the way you want to. And so depending on how I'm feeling, if I'm feeling not so inspired or tired, I get on with technical work, and if I'm feeling like I'm ready to write things, I'll go and do that. Yeah.
So going back to Orchestra Vitae, so obviously you were commissioned for that wonderful piece Archers way back in 2016, but your relationship with them that is now ongoing. So how did you get involved in the orchestra in the longer term?
Yeah, so after this commission, I really liked, a bit like what you said, I just really liked what the orchestra's doing in promoting music by living composers as such a feature of what they do, and they do it in every concert. They play something by a living composer. And I'm really passionate about listening to lots of new music, and I spend a lot of time listening to all sorts of new things that come out. And so shortly after the commission, they asked if I'd like to join their board of directors, which was an absolute honor. So I joined right away. And my role, I suppose, is kind of advising on contemporary music. So whenever they have a program, if they have certain instrumentation that they're using for that program, I will then suggest various repertoire that will fit in with that program for them to choose in the end. But I will kind of do a lot of research, listen to lots of things that I think suits the orchestra and the players, because I got to know them. Yeah, so it's been fantastic to continue 4 years later, still being involved.
Great. Obviously, it's been a strange time in this lockdown world year, but hopefully, Orchestra Vitae are coming back soon with a new performance in November. But I think I remember going to see, was it your last piece back in January, before when we were still able to go and see pieces live?
Yeah. That was my last concert in January. There was supposed to be lots more in the last few months, but it's obviously not happening for everyone. But yeah, this was a concert in Wigmore Hall, a piece commissioned by BBC Radio 3 for Jennifer Pike and Martin Roscoe, and it was called Dualism. And it was really, really fun piece to write, and they played it so beautifully.
Yeah, this showcases, I guess, a different side of you for, like, a small chamber playing.
Yeah, it was really fun to write this, because it had probably been about almost 2 years since I'd written a chamber piece, which was crazy, because the year before that I'd written an opera, which was totally different experience, and it was 90 minutes, and it was just orchestral works after that. So it was actually really nice to suddenly go back to that intimacy of writing a violin and piano duo.
Brilliant.
Yeah,
well,
I think we have.
Yeah, let's listen to a bit of that now.
Cool.
As a violinist, I really appreciate that, I think.
I will say that was a bit of a cadenza. The whole thing's not that hard,
Yeah.
but they were both just amazing. Yeah.
I like that kind of thing. So I guess I might ask you at this time, because we're really reaching at the end of this conversation. So what's next for you? What are your plans in the next year or so?
Yeah, so there's during the lockdown, I was very fortunate that just before the lockdown, I got a huge project, the biggest project I've ever been involved with, that involves writing music for an entire building, an hour of music with full orchestra and sound design that I was working on through that. And a big part of next year is going to be the launch of that, which I'm really looking forward to. But actually, Naomi, I'd like to share that Naomi is now my manager, which is really lovely, because I feel like it's been kind of semi in the making for a while, and I'm really excited now to be working with you. And there are lots of things. Some I'm not allowed to say yet, but something that is coming up is with the Liverpool Philharmonic. I'm writing a trombone concerto for Peter Moore, the principal of the LSO, who is just unbelievable. And this was an amazing chance to work with the Liverpool Phil again. And it's my first concerto, and it's 20 to 25 minutes. So it's the biggest kind of thing I've done. I'm really, really looking forward to that. And aside from that, I have a commission with the Marian Consort for next summer instead of this summer, unfortunately. But I'm really looking forward to that. And a few with the Aura Singers, and a variety of chamber, larger, different, lots of different things.
No. No, it's great. We've known each other for 6 years, and it's so nice that we've talked for so long and talked about your career even before I professionally started my own company to actually kind of help composers strategize and act as a manager for them. But like having Orchestra Vitae in the middle of that, where I was also able to play your music and know that commission happened at such a pivotal time in your career, it'll be really exciting where we can both go next with what you're doing.
Exactly.
So I'd say to everybody, watch this space on both sides.
Exactly.
So what I would say now is thanks so much to all of you who tuned in this evening for our conversation. There is the next in the series happening next week at the same time at 7 o'clock on the 28th, and that will be led by Lindsay Silver, who will be having conversation with conductor Pablo Urbina and guest conductor Philip Keller. And hopefully there'll also be a concert later in November. So thank you Dani Howard for chatting to me this evening, and I'm sure I'll chat to you.
Thank you very much.
And yes. Everybody.
Have a good night.
Bye.
Bye.